Thumbs
I
up?
can see it, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Leticia Vaca, owner and founder of Urban Health Group, LLC, actually incorporated. And tonight we're going to be talking about benefits you can use if you get sick. So a little bit about me. I'm a therapist licensed here in California, speaker, entrepreneur, and I own two companies, one Urban Health Group and Urban Catalyst Psychotherapy, providing psychotherapy to folks in California. So I have over 17 years of experience in the field of health, human services, and mental health. So I've worked in a variety of arenas supporting folks, letting folks in. But my own experience of loss informs my work. So I never want to lose sight of my humanness. And it really, that's my approach when I'm working with folks. I think about my own family and the supports that we weren't afforded, and wanting to be the change and making sure that folks get the highest quality of support, especially in a crisis. My specialty is in trauma and medical psychotherapy, but overall, I really enjoy working with folks with day-to-day life struggles. I believe in people and I believe in communities. Anytime I have a chance to meet with folks in non-traditional ways, talking about some really heavy stuff, I'm here for it. So tonight we're going to be talking about some topics that we don't typically talk about in our normal day-to-day social environments, but it's really critical concerning what's going on with the community health concerns. So today we're going to be talking about the rate of disability in the US, learn about some financial resources, and we have a dear guest, Mr. David Mufty, here to talk about benefits you can use if you ever get sick. What I'm not going to do is leave you hanging, make you feel bad, but you may notice your feelings more after this presentation. So we'll definitely give you some contact information if you have questions after our time together. I know I'm being very ambitious. We have an hour together to talk about a lot of different things, but my goal is that you begin to be interested in exploring more and making really good choices in your care, whether that be your health care, maybe it's a family member you're supporting, or your own emotional wellness. So you're going to notice some things, but we're not going to leave you hanging. So I want to know a little bit about who's joining us today. You can either open your mic if you feel comfortable, or type in the chat, but I want to know your name, where you're from, and if you know someone, or if you've been that someone who's been temporarily disabled or permanently disabled. So I'll start with myself. I'm Leticia Vaca. I'm based here in Oakland, California, and I have known folks personally who've been temporarily or permanently disabled. With my partner, he had a torus patella tendon and he was out of work for 6 months. I also have some loved ones who have been permanently disabled due to mental health conditions and some chronic health conditions. So this topic is near and dear to me. Anyone else? Name, where you're from, and if you know someone, or if you are that someone.
Well, I'll go next. Hi, I'm David Mufty, and I work in of course, insurance, but my road here has been a long one. I've seen, as I've worked in the world and worked in businesses, and I have been serving all those years, I've seen people really need to have the support when they are disabled. They need the financial support, they need the moral, and they need the psychological support. I walk in with financial support. So as I go on, I will explain it. So I worked as a funeral director for about 11 years. I have owned a business. And I think working in funerals, I've learned of the challenge of having no money when you are sick and when you die. So, and I have some answers there.
Okay.
So
thank you. We have Brianna in the chat, known coworkers who have gone out on disability. So it is a common term that we hear, But we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and the impact of when a person experiences disability, whether it's short-term or more permanently. Anyone else in the group? Okay. And have struggled to remain financially stable. Yeah, so there's definitely a economic impact when either physically or mentally someone is having some challenges. So if you feel comfortable, continue to participate in the chat, but I'm going to move forward. So it's known, according to the CDC, that there's 61 million Americans with disability, living with a disability. And so it's a very common experience that folks may find themselves with. We know that 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability, and the percentage of folks living with disabilities tend to be higher in the southern part of the US. So one of the doctors with the CDC noted that at some point in folks' life, in their lives, most people will have had a disability or know someone who has. So learning more about people with disabilities in the United States can help us better understand how to meet their needs. So there's no shame in having either a temporary or permanent hardship, but the challenge is we haven't, as a society, really met the needs of people, whether that be accommodations or financial resources to add those additional supports. So we know there's a high rate of folks with some challenges. So the definition of disability, according to the Americans with Disability Act, defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities and being regarded as having an impairment. So I'll go over in the next slide exactly what that means. Sometimes when we talk about these terms, it's just words, right? So what does it mean to have a physical or mental impairment? So there's 6 types of disabilities that we can kind of classify, where one is mobility. So these are folks who typically have serious difficulty walking or climbing stairs. So think about your folks who have, we know a lot of athletes who have gone out on injuries, right? So that's one easy one to think about. My partner report towards patella tendon, a mobility concern. But this is also notable for elders whose functional status have changed, and now they're requiring additional support. So folks with some physical limitations around walking or climbing stairs. 2 is cognition. So these are folks who have difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. This can look like folks with Alzheimer's, or it can look like someone with severe clinical depression, right? So we know that when a person is experiencing intense depressive symptoms or anxiety symptoms, it's hard to focus. You may notice for yourself sometimes it's hard to you're rereading paragraphs and making mistakes and having difficulty. So a disability with cognition tends to be around concentration, remembering, and making decisions. The third one is hearing. So folks who have serious difficulty hearing, that's pretty straightforward. And vision, folks who have difficulty seeing. So it's not only folks with total blindness, but there's variations of blindness that are considered deficits or impairments to daily functioning. When we think about number 5, independent living, these are not terms, again, that are commonly used, but independent living are people who have difficulty doing errands alone. This is difficulty shopping, driving, cooking and cleaning for themselves. And the last one is self-care. So we know self-care is this fluffy thing, but self-care can be things like dressing yourself. Folks who have issues with their fingers and neuropathy. This can be an elderly person or someone with some neurological deficits, having difficulty bathing and dressing themselves. These are the 6 classic types of disabilities. So we know that according to the data that more women, non-Hispanic, Native folks tend to have higher rates of disability when it comes to mobility issues. Again, these are things around your ability to move or move about. The other thing to consider is that it's more common for adults over 65 years old to have health insurance issues or having greater risk of having these type of impairments to your daily living. Now, I like pictures because they help break up the words. But when we think about the disparities that exist around disabilities, is that the likelihood of having a disability increases with age. So as you get older, your body is not cooperating as much as it used to. And we know that at least 6% of young adults ages 18 to 20 have a disability. So it's not only reserved for older adults, but it is happening for younger people too. People, when you look at the rates by ethnicity and race, Native folks have 3 out of 10 folks have a disability. For Black people, it's 1 in 4 have a disability. For white folks, 1 in 5. Native Hawaiian, 1 in 6. For it's Hispanic, but now we use the term Latinx, 1 in 6, and for Asians, 1 in 10. So if you look around your family, for big families, you can look at 1 in 4 of us may have some type of impairment that can be considered a disability. When you look at the graphs the other way, there's groups that have greater risk of and greater likelihood of disabilities. Now, David briefly touched on the financial impact. So when we look at what disability does, it's not only impacting your day-to-day function, but also like your ability to go to work. So if you have an impairment that prevents you from being able to work, it impacts your money. And so we look by race when we know that folks have greater risk of disability, also greater risk of poverty. So it's hard to kind of separate those out. When you look at this graph here, these are all folks with this, in the light blue is with a disability, and the darker chart bar is no disability. So there's a 37% according to 2015 of folks who are Black that that have a disability and living in poverty. So I hope that was kind of clear, but that's what that's showing, the rate of the challenges, but also the economic impact. So it's not just that folks have impairments and there's an economic cost, but we look at the prevalence of continuing to have issues. So we look at the financial impact. There are people who did not get medical care because they couldn't afford it. And so according to this survey, people with disabilities were less likely to get medical attention when needed because of the cost factor. So there's this growing issue, and it's really timely to talk about it with the COVID community health concern around folks getting sick, and what does that mean long-term? So it's not just, disability, not being able to make work, but there are some supports, financial supports that are available. And I'll go through a few of them because most of them are geared towards health. So the Social Security disability insurance is for folks who are unable to work, right? So, but this is only eligible for folks who have a work history. So you had to, if you have gaps in your employment due to like staying home, taking care of your kids, or like teachers, they don't have state disability. So if there's an injury, you're not eligible to use this type of Social Security benefit. There's the national program of Medicaid. So folks who meet the poverty income restriction are eligible to receive some healthcare coverage, and it varies from state to state. For children, with health concerns, and these can be children who were born prematurely, tend to meet this criteria of the Children's Health Insurance Program, which provides some assistance with health insurance that you wouldn't typically receive through work to pay your medical bills. So this is in addition to like Medicaid, but again, it can vary from state to state. Medicare is another financial resource. We also know this as a Social Security benefit, but you have to meet an age requirement. So folks over 65 are eligible, and people under 65 who have a disability can be eligible for Medicare. People tend to be eligible for this when your condition is more severe. So for folks who have kidney disease, it has to be end-stage renal disease to be eligible for Medicare. And these are also some type of cancers if you're under 65. Now, the other one, if you are service connected, so for veterans, there's the VA, there's a type of health and coverage that is for veterans. But again, it depends on your service connection. So I've worked with so many folks in the ER who served, but were not eligible to this benefit because of their service connection. So some people were dishonorably discharged, or they're partially connected. So you want to get clarification on your service connection if you're a veteran. So again, these are some programs you may or may not be eligible for. The other type of financial supports are charity programs. So all hospitals are nonprofit. Most of them are nonprofit. They have some charity fund. You have to ask for it, and you have to meet their criteria. When it comes to other life resources, so like who's going to pay my mortgage or your rent or buy groceries or put gas in your car, that's where we begin to see some of the issues with the impacts of disability, where there's not extra funds for these day-to-day life needs. So there are some home utility programs. If you call your energy company or your water company, you may be eligible for resources if you have a condition that warrants, that meets their criteria for like a discount. So again, you see there's some, but not a lot. And if you try to Google these things, it can even get more confusing. So it's no surprise that most people use crowdfunding to pay for their medical bills and personal affairs. So we know that if a person is hospitalized, let's say you have a heart attack or stroke, and you're in the hospital for a few days, you're away from work, and they find out you need more tests, more treatment. So you're not eligible to go back to work because you're not well enough, right? People are turning towards GoFundMe's and all these crowdsourcing programs to help supplement their income. You can look in the past 10 years how exponentially folks are using crowdfunding to pay for their day-to-day costs. So from May 2010 through December 2018, more than 10 billion was sought through online medical fundraisers in the US, with more than 3 billion raised. So people were asking, collectively up to 10 billion for support. 3 billion was supplied. So there's a huge need to support folks when they get sick. And so that's what's really spurring this conversation today, is there's something going on. We're really not talking about it that much. And it can be really confusing to navigate getting access to resources or tapping into resources you already have. So what can you do? That's the biggest thing. I'm not one to just be talking about the issues that exist without looking for a solution. And so what Urban Health Group does is our major tenet is to provide information, but really empower folks to take lead in their healthcare needs or their healthcare journey. So I've invited David Mufty from the National Life Group to talk about insurance benefits that you can use if you get sick. And this is new to me. And so I felt like, let's share it with the community, because there may be other folks who have questions. And especially as our aging community, the likelihood of needing some more support, it grows. So whether you need it now, or maybe you don't need it now, or someone who could benefit, this information is still valid. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. David Mufty. And I'll stop sharing on my end and let you take over.
Hi, Letitia, appreciate that. Thank you. So looks like we have a few attendees here, and of course, welcome. I of course appreciate the opportunity to show we have a solution. Like Letitia had said, this lack of money really, this one, affects everyone. In particular, if you are a minority. So just to let you know who I am and what I do and why I do what I do is, as you can have a look, I've traveled a bit. My first exposure to poverty in the States is when I was a volunteer at Meals on Wheels. I used to meet the elderly, I used to meet the disabled, who ended up with no food. So in a church in LA is where we actually worked at a chapter there of Meals on the Wheels. And I was surprised as to how they ended up with no money and with no food, and they all actually had a common theme. It was a lack of planning. They didn't think that they would get disabled or get older and have those needs. So, and I went on, I worked in the telephone industry, and we also had a restaurant, but I also had a photography company where I used to work a lot with the a walk for life, which is it is one of the events of the American Cancer Society. Once again, I saw survivors. I saw those who had cancer and were fighting it. And what was common with them all was they had no financial support, because the diagnosis was sudden, and once they were in treatment, they actually had no income. And then I also was working with the Alzheimer's Association. Once again, it's when you reach that stage is when you need resources to actually handle your treatments and your care each day. And I went on to work as a funeral director. It's when my eyes were open to this very big need out there to, so we are young and we turn older and older and we die. But as we turn older, we are sicker. We now, because we have excellent healthcare, we are sicker longer. And when we are sick, we have no income. And so I used to meet many families who would say, we have no money. we have a funeral, we want to have, I mean, a Catholic one. And well, what we would do is actually have a conversation and say, so what will you be able to pay? And I used to always hear the stories of how the deceased was sick for a long, long time. All the resources of the family went into his or into his or her care. So when they reach the end, it's exhausted. So, and I used to also see they would be there with no money. So I worked there for 11 years. And in year 6, I was thinking, this is real stressful. I should do something else. And real gradually, I went into insurance because I had a product, I had coverage, I had a policy that I really liked. So I worked in the business, I worked on the side, and once I knew the product and knew what to do, I just went out like on my own. Now, what is the product? So we have policies, and they all are they are bundled with living benefits, which is right here.
David, can you share it up at the right if you press share?
Oh, right.
There.
Yes.
I'm sorry, not share. I'm trying to have you present it. Let's see. There usually is a present button.
So is there something that you I mean are not seeing?
No, we can see it. I was just trying to have you put it in present mode, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Excellent. So we have a product that's with our policies. It is right here. So if you get, well, I just want you to also have a look at the stats once again, is that we have health issues every second. As we can see, we have some stats here that show that we are, I mean, at risk of, I mean, a stroke, heart attacks, disabilities, and it is constant. So what do we do? So we have a benefit with our plans that you'd be able to access your money inside the policy if you are sick, if you are disabled, if you have an accident, and all the products are right here. So if you have what's known as, I mean, a terminal illness, it's right at the end. It's when you need your money. So you will be paid out about 90% of your policy in cash. Well, I mean, a check. So you do what you want with the funds, because it's when you need your money. Now, we do 6 things each day. Letitia actually had one of the slides that had explained it. So if you're not able to do 2 of them, like you're not, able to be dressed, eat, go to the bathroom, or walk, then you will be paid out like, a monthly what's that called? Amount.
Yeah.
Right. Now, if you have anything like if you have a stroke, heart attack, cancer, you have a transplant, you have any of these things here, you will be paid out like a lump sum up to 70% of what is your coverage. Now, why is this here important? Because once again, you need the money when you need the money, and it's when you are sick. Now, I want to go on to one more, which is not here.
Before you move on, I want to just kind of highlight what this actually looks like. So this particular insurance policy benefit classifies the ability to access this benefit under terminal illness, chronic illness, and critical illness. So the thing that stuck out for me when you were sharing it with me was that I've had a lot of loved ones with chronic illness where they were unable to complete 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, right? So they would have been eligible for this. I've had loved ones who were chronically ill and it transitioned to a terminal illness. And so what that looked like for my family was my, because you don't know, right? So medicine can only take you so far. We're really hopeful that the healthcare providers do the best they can to get your loved one back functioning, but that doesn't always happen, or sometimes it's over a prolonged period of time. So I wish I would have known about this. And the example I'll give is like, not, my mother-in-law is in the hospital and we're paying her rent for a year because we're not sure because of her condition was so back and forth. And so, luckily as a family, we were able to pull it together to do that while she was unavailable. But that's a second process that you have to do. One, we're stressed out about, her condition, and the other one is making sure we're paying her internet, and I mean, not her internet, but like her utilities or rent, and any other bills that she might have had. This would have supplemented at least, 70 to 90% of it. Was it 70%?
Yeah.
Okay. That would have
90%.
been a great help. And, the critical illness one are the more common conditions that we see with heart attack, stroke, cancer, renal failure in our society. So when we look at the criteria, there's some people who meet that now.
Thank you. So there's one more here I wanted to also see. Was we have more things that we will cover, because the thing is, like Leticia has put out there, with the doctors who are excellent, we do, and if you have health insurance, you will have the treatment covered. But once again, who will do your rent? Who's going to handle your car? Who will handle your premiums? Who will handle the co-pays? It's when you need your money. So if you have a look at what we have out here, we have a lot of things here that actually, are common. Like you have a brain, injury, which has been traumatic if you have an accident, right? So we do have that one covered. And one of the big things, actually, I have a friend of mine, a very, very dear, very, 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 very beloved, a friend I've known for a long while. He died in August. He had ALS. It absolutely drained his family, and he had a lot. He had a business. He was doing well, and he had Kaiser, so they actually had the care. But once again, he had a mortgage, he had a business, he had everything else. It was a long process, at least, a year, to where he had no coverage, and it was out of the savings. So I know, a person who had that. I know, a person who has cancer, and he's absolutely broke because of, once again, he's not at his work. He has no savings now. So he lives with, his parents. They actually handle all his bills. And he and I were actually having a word about a week or so ago, and he was saying, well, one of these days we will want to do go fund me. And I was sad because he's a smart man. And I had a conversation actually with him 1.5 years ago about, a policy. And once he had the diagnosis, I felt really, really terrible. Ought I have been more, aggressive, assertive? He would have, of course, he would have kicked me out of his house, but it's okay. At least I tried. So once again, this can happen to anyone, and it does. So these are things that now we will cover. If you look at a stroke, just one of those things out there that, if you have one, because we are blessed with, hospitals and of course, the doctors, we will survive. But how long will we not work? The average is 8 years. So for that long, how will you support yourself? You won't, unless you have a policy and you are covered. So the thing here is not to scare you.
Right.
The thing is to inform you.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know, you won't know. I did not know until I had the policy, and I actually had the policy in my 60s, where I'm older, and I was always thinking, what if I get sick? And I will. One is day I'll get sick, I'll be a burden. So I do have the policy, I have the coverage, and I'm a little at ease. I don't want to be sick. I want to watch TV, so I don't want to do all that stuff. So once again, this is just information of what is out there, and you do have some protections. You do have something that would be able to, assist you. And if it's not you, you will know, like others. There's one thing else also I want to put in there is, because of COVID, if anybody if they have had COVID and they have been inside, a hospital, they won't have insurance. They will be denied. If you have had COVID and you haven't been inside the hospital, you will have a policy, but the premium will be, house payment, and you won't actually have the coverages you wish. So the thing we should do now is, if you haven't had COVID, now is the time. It's going rampant. So once again, information, it's not a scare. I have a policy. I believe in it.
Yeah.
So any questions?
Yeah, and that's the same thing as the timeliness of it, right? So you don't need it if you don't need it. But when you do need it, you hope you have the supports in place. And that's why we talk about these things ahead of time, where even living trust and wills and healthcare directives, those are not fun things to do, but they're extremely helpful in the case that you do need them. So we talk about these resources, and what you're talking about, David, is life insurance that I classically have known it as, this will pay my bills when I'm dead kind of benefit.
Right.
There's a living benefit that I think a lot of people can benefit from. So the timeliness of it is, you want to have this plan in place before something happens. Now, the second thing you just mentioned is COVID, right? So I tried to get life insurance earlier this year, and they came out and did all the stuff, and my premium was higher because I was 3 pounds overweight. And I said, I'm not going to pay this policy, so I'm going to lose weight and then do it again. But I remember during the questioning, they asked me, have you been exposed to COVID? Have you traveled outside of the country or so they're asking some different type of questions. And while a lot of people are remaining as safe as possible, and maybe you have not contracted the virus, this would be a really good time to consider getting a policy in place, with the awareness that folks are getting it, even vaccinated folks are getting it. So you want to add all the options to optimize your care when it's available to you, so that you get access to great care, and that your affairs are managed, that you can give your family something to use, right? So everybody's kind of kind of tapped and kind of strapped and kind of stressed out. So if I can make my life easier, and if there was a time that it got difficult, these type of supports will just be having your family following the game plan. So we talk about this because I was, I'm not going to say misinformed, but I wasn't completely informed about the full benefits of what life insurance could offer you. So that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to bring this talk, this discussion to Urban Health Group platform so that we can learn about the options and see if that would be something that you wanted to do.
Excellent. One of the things that I hear each day is, I have no money. I don't want to pay this. So we also have, a program that you can actually just start at a low amount and build it up. So the thing is about the protection is that it's not an amount which was lost and you just wait until you have a loss, because you have premiums that go into a fund. They will accumulate. So after a few years, you have amount that you would be able to take out or spend or loan or do anything you want with it. So it has a financial component that you have the protection and you have the finances. So right now, in the past, when I was younger, you had to die to have your money, but the companies now see that there is a need to make it available while you are sick, which is excellent, because as you just now heard, is that it isn't if, it's when. And I'd suggest you just think about it a bit, because when you have a need, you have a need.
Yeah.
So any questions, anybody?
So I'm gonna share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stop to share.
Yeah. Let's see. These Zoom transitions. So with that being said, that's a lot to think about, a lot to consider, and Urban Health Group is available to help folks kind of navigate this process of, what do I even need? Where do I start? Our role is not to tell you what to do, but to point you in the right direction. You can also use National Life Group with David Mufty around exploring some different benefits to see what you may be eligible for or where you can get started. And I encourage folks not to just Google anything around healthcare, because you'll get a lot of stuff. There's a lot of people selling a lot of different things, and it may not be as comprehensive. It may be cheaper, but don't cover anything. So one of the agencies that I encourage folks to always look up if you're going to Google anything is healthcare.gov, because they have a lot of vetted information that's not swaying or trying to get you to purchase anything in particular, but just to be more informed about different options. The things with Urban Health Group, we are helping people plan well for care through a live course. So we provide some coaching assistance to learn some tools and skills that help with the decision-making process, to develop community and accountability and making sure that you get this done. This is a lot of work that people tend to put off, and sometimes it's too late. So my personal goal is to make sure that folks are in community and doing this together. Sometimes people say, I don't want to work in groups. I want one-on-one support. So we also offer healthcare navigation support. Either there's a crisis that comes up, or you want to do some advanced planning before anything happens, or I'm good, I just want to make sure my family's good down the road. And we have David's contact information, so please take a screenshot of this if you want to contact him to learn more about different policies that may fit you and your family's needs. So I want to thank you all for joining in, but I want to check in to see if you have any thoughts or questions that came up during our talk. And you can just open your mic or type in the chat.
Oh, the silence is absolutely deafening. I had to drop that in.
I can say something. This is Brianna.
Go ahead.
Y'all hear me? Okay. My thought was, I've been saying for like the past few years that I should get life insurance, for myself, and also even thinking about it for my mom who's elderly and a little bit sick. But hearing the conversations tonight, especially the part about like if you get COVID, your premium could be higher, or you may not be able to get life insurance, or even like what you said, Leticia, about like the whole like weight thing and having like to drop 3 pounds. And I was like, wait a minute, well, how healthy am I? Like and like what, and I'm thinking I'm on my Kaiser app, like, wait a minute, okay, what's my BMI and stuff. And I won't stress out about it too much. I can wait till, that time gets there. But
Right.
has put a fire under me. Like, yeah, I'm doing the advanced planning with you now, but also like this, I was thinking about life insurance, and it's really important. I need to do it. I don't know, I don't have a lot of family members or a lot of friends who are doing this type of stuff, so I appreciate you putting this on and inviting David to talk to us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining in, because we hear it in blips. And I come from a family that always had a life insurance man, but they didn't really pass it on. I just knew him because he'd stop by the house all the time. But even in a family that does it, we don't talk about it amongst ourselves. So I took it for granted, I want to say, because I've always had employers where life insurance was included as a benefit. It changed when you change jobs, right? So if you decide to quit, that benefit goes away. And now, being self-employed as an entrepreneur, I have to put these parameters in place, and it's not contingent on my employment. So we look at what you already have. Maybe you have it and maybe you want to increase it more. Some people do want to stay at their career for 30 years, which is totally beautiful. But for folks who are like, I don't think I'm gonna be here another 2 years, you may want to consider getting a policy outside of your employment so that you always have it in place. And so, I'm not an insurance person. David can answer that. But what I considered is, my family's health history, where there's a lot of folks who did get sick, a lot of folks who have had some treatable stuff and it wasn't managed well, and some folks who had some terminal things like cancer that really was resistant to treatment. So we know that this stuff is happening. We know that it's difficult. And I'm saying Urban Health Group is here to support. And we're inviting David in to be that additional resource, because I don't do that.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or feedback?
Okay, Brianna, I do have some. So I just want to let you know that weight has very, very little bearing on a policy, because the weight charts with insurance are really, really different from, say, a Kaiser, because a Kaiser has its own standards. So I am 5'7", and if I weighed 210, it would be okay. It's within the guidelines, because the insurance business looks at life a little more realistically, not idealistically, because we all eat what we eat and we live how we live. If they had to put all these restrictions, they would have no business. Sure. Because it is what it is. So weight is not a big factor. I think if you're overall healthy and you're what's so happy, it'll be all right.
So I have resources here. This will be posted on YouTube, so you'll have access to review some of this stuff a little bit down the road. Here's our information if you want to connect or feel like it could be helpful for anyone, just to kind of browse and see what's there. You really should shop around for the best resources, the best information, because you deserve it, your family deserves it. It's not always accessible. So we want to make sure with Urban Health Group that people know where to go. It can be confusing, and so that's okay. It is a bit of a maze, but it doesn't have to be so daunting that you say, forget it altogether, right? So thank you all for joining in. Here's our information. I thank you, David, for talking with me personally, but also sharing the stage with me to let us know what's available.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
And I think we're good.
Okay, everyone, good night, and thank you again, and let me know if I can assist in any way.